Sapiens is a history book written by Yuval Noah Harari. It is one of my favorite nonfiction books, and I don't even say that lightly. It has everything a good book needs: narrative, information, word choice, structure, and best of all, it also has everything a good book wants: style, humor, important lessons, and just everything about this book, in my opinion, is just amazing, and here's why. The main focus of Sapiens is a comprehensive guide to human history. Now, unlike most history books, it does not go into massive amounts of details about really commonly viewed and commonly talked about events like the Roman Empire, but instead he just explains the main contents, the main concepts, and moves on. The book does call itself a Brief History of Humankind, so I guess that does check out. It also pauses to explain a bunch of the implications and a lot of the impacts of certain events, not just from the usual standpoint of, how humans changed, but more on how thinking changed. For example, the explanation of the agricultural revolution was not filled with the world had more food and more populations emerged. Instead, it focused on how malnutrition and disease actually got worse, and so did standardized living. The elites, the aristocracies, they all emerged because of the food surpluses, and then massive empires happened. And this is a very unorthodox view on the agricultural revolution that most history books don't take. This is just one example, and most of the events on the book have very unique views that are pretty special and make this book a lot more enjoyable than it already is. The topics of Sapiens are on beliefs and ways of thinking. It talks about how major world religions were formed, how they treated others, and how it related to the most important societal structures at the time, such as empires. An example is how Romans did not actually persecute Christianity nearly as much as a bunch of other books portray them to be, and were actually pretty lenient with the religious diversity so long as they respected the empire and the emperor. Besides religions, it also discusses a bunch of types of ideologies, which are very similar things in detail. For example, the rise of liberalism, the rise of communism, and different types of humanism were all discussed while being integrated into a bunch of major events throughout history, such as World War I and II. And lastly, progress is a major topic as well. The scientific revolution in 1492, combined with the growing economy, shaped many of the new powers humanity has today, especially with medicine and computers. This progress is discussed in much more detail in the book and explained on why this is an important impact. Each of these three topics, especially the idea of intersubjective beliefs and religions, are discussed mainly throughout the book and integrated into every single chapter. The written quality of Sapiens is pretty good. Not only does the author make everything sound pretty interesting, but varied word choice, great analogies, and transitions all make Sapiens a joy to read in general. It doesn't really have any flaws with writing. The structure is split into 4 main parts, very clearly defined. There should be no problem reading the book or making sense of what he's saying. Now onto the flaws of Sapiens. Now, I've seen quite a bit of critique for Sapiens, positive, negative, because it does present a few opinions that can be challenged, can be, different for most people, and we have to remain open-minded to criticism. So for Sapiens, many of the criticisms just revolve around the fact that the author does not address some points with nearly enough detail that they deserve. For example, many religions are kind of showered upon by some negative opinions and then just left there, as in there's not nearly enough detail to really explain thoroughly. And a lot of other theories, for example, are being criticized now because they don't seem to make a lot of sense. This, again, could be corrected simply by just explaining more detail in the book itself. So honestly, I feel like the flaw is that it's just too short. I really enjoyed a few sections like the discovery of ignorance, which is the introduction to the scientific revolution. And I felt that it did not go into enough detail. As a history book, it's 416 pages. It's actually on the low side, and some more content would have helped make the book better. So in conclusion, Sapiens is an interesting narrative that's very thought-provoking and explains a lot about the progression of humanity. It does have some shorter sections that I wish could have been expanded to more detail, but honestly, besides that, it's just an interesting, all-around amazing book, and it's definitely one of my favorite nonfictions out there.